Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about how we can use the product property of exponents to solve problems involving area and volume. So let's look at the first problem. This first one is asking us, what is the area of a rectangle with a length of 3m squared p cubed inches and a width of 2mp squared inches? So remember, we're talking about a rectangle here. So I'm just going to draw one. And what this story is telling us is that the length is 3m squared p to the third power, and that the width is 2mp squared. Now, they want us to find the area of this rectangle. And if you remember, to find the area of a rectangle, you multiply length times width. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to get this length, and we're going to multiply it by this width. Okay, so I'm just going to write it down here. 3mp squared p to the third power times 2mp squared. Okay, so when multiplying exponential expressions this way, we have to combine like terms. So starting with the coefficients, what I mean by coefficients is the numbers out front. We're going to obey the regular rules of multiplication, and we're going to multiply those two numbers. 3 times 2 is 6. Now let's move on to the m. I have m to the second power, and then just a regular m, and we know that when there's no exponent, there's an invisible 1. Now the product property of exponent says that when you're multiplying terms that have the same base, so here how they have both m's, we add those exponents. So this would be m to the 2 plus 1 power, and then next the p's. So I have p to the third power times p to the second power. And same rule still applies. We're going to add those exponents. 3 plus 2. So now if I wanted to simplify all of this, be 6m to the third power p to the fifth power. And that would be the area of that rectangle. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, this one says, what is the area of a rectangle that has a length of 8r squared s squared yards and a width of r to the third s to the fourth yards? So again, think of your rectangle, and they're telling us that the length is 8r to the second power s to the second power, and that the width is r to the third s to the fourth. We know to find the area of a rectangle, it's always length times width, so we're going to multiply those two expressions. 8 r to the second s to the second times r to the third s to the fourth. Okay, now we would start with the coefficients of each expression. So for this one has an 8 out front, but the second expression does not have a coefficient. But again, we have to remember that that's an invisible 1 there. So 8 times 1 gives me 8. Now let's look at the variables. We have to combine like variables, so the r will get combined with this other r. And product property says that we add these exponents. So this would be r to the fifth power. And then last, let's get those s's. So s to the second power times s to the fourth power. Let's add those exponents. So this would be s to the sixth power. So the area of our rectangle is 8r to the fifth, s to the sixth. Okay, now let's look at our next problem. This time it says, what is the volume of a rectangular prism with a length of 2 mp to the third q to the second units a width of m squared p squared q to the third units, and a height of 3m to the third pq to the second units. Okay, so this time we're looking for volume of a rectangular prism. So when you think of a rectangular prism, think of a box, or like a cereal box. Something, let me try to do this. Kind of like that. So you see how it has 3 dimensions. 1, 2, and 3. That's what each of these represents: the height, the length, and the width of that box. So when we find the volume, what we need to do is multiply all 3. So length times width times height. So we will have 2m p to the third q to the second times m squared p squared q to the third times 3m to the third pq squared. Okay, so when multiplying all of these expressions, we're going to start by combining the coefficients. So I have a 2 out front, an invisible 1 out front here, and a 3 out front. We're going to multiply all 3 of these. So 2 times 1 is 2, times 3 gives me 6. Now let's combine the variables. So right here I have m, here I have m squared, and m to the third power. Product property says that I need to add all of these exponents. So the first one had invisible 1, plus 2 gives me 3, plus 3 gives me 6. Okay, now for the p's, I have p to the third, p squared, and then just a normal p. So we'll add all of those exponents. So that would be 3, 4, 5, 6. And then last for the q, we have q squared plus 3 plus another 2. So that gives me q to the 7th power. So the volume of that rectangular prism is 6m to the 6th power, p to the 6th power, q to the 7th. And now for our last problem. What is the volume of a rectangular prism with a length of x squared y inches, a width of x to the third y to the fourth inches, and a height of x squared y to the third inches? So same here, when it's a prism, rectangular prism, you have to think of this as a box where they give you all 3 dimensions. So when we're finding volume, all we need to do is multiply all 3. So length times width times height. So for this problem, I have x squared y times x cubed y to the fourth times x squared y to the third. So let's combine our like terms. So this time we didn't have any coefficients, but let's start with those x's. I have x to the second, x to the third, and another x to the second. Product property says that I need to add all of those exponents. So 2 plus 3 plus 2. And then the same thing with those y's. I have y, y to the fourth, and y to the third. That first one has that invisible 1. So if we add all those exponents, it would be 1 plus 4 plus 3. So let's simplify this as much as we can. This would become x to the 7th power and y to the 8th power. And that would be the volume of our rectangular prism. Okay, and this is how you use the product property of exponents to find area and volume of rectangular shapes.